in the first chapter of the book of Acts, just before Jesus ascended to heaven, he's talking to his apostles, and he says to them in verse 8, "You shall be witnesses to me in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." Today is a very special day here at the Louisville congregation. Today is Mission Sunday. Today is a day where we get the opportunity to report out on how well we've done this year as a mission committee, to share with you the works that we've done and the missions that we support throughout the world. But today is also a day where we stop and reflect how well we're doing. How are we following the example that Jesus gave his apostles to go into all the world and to preach the gospel to every living creature, as it says in Mark 16:15. Before we go much further, I should probably stop and say to our visitors, welcome. We're glad you're with us today. In the course of our day, we were going to focus on our mission efforts, but you should know that we, as a body of believers here in Louisville, are committed to following all of the teachings of Jesus Christ, not just the area of missions. And if you have any questions about anything that we do today, anything that you hear us say, or questions about the congregation as a whole, please stop and ask anyone who is wearing one of these name tags. You guys are wearing your name tags, right? Great. I should also stop and say to our shepherds, thank you. Over the course of the last month, you have given us a great platform to share with the congregation the works that we support, and we really appreciate it. And most importantly, to you, the body, thank you for your generous support. As we're going to show you today, we've done great things, and there's more great things as we go forward. In past years, we have asked one of our missionaries to give us a report out on Mission Sunday. Last year, we had Mike Napier with the Gospel Chariot who spoke to us, and we also had Serge Villarison who spoke to us on the work in Haiti. And this past week, we had Randy Warzika that gave us a report out on the work in Brazil. This year, we thought we'd do something different. You see, many on the mission committee are relatively new to the committee. And what we found through our exploration is that, we didn't know all of the works that we support all that well. And as I've talked to many of you, I have found that to be true as well. While many of us are familiar with some of the works that we support, less of us are familiar with all of the works that we support. And that's really been our focus over the last month, and our focus today is to try to give you a little more information, a little more details on the works that we support, and secondly, why we support those works. Now, as I've talked to you about missions, there's really two key questions that often I hear. Number one, what is the difference between Mission Sunday funds and your normal mission budget? I see these budget, on the slides going through, we saw those budgets this is a budgeted work, this is a non-budgeted work. So what's the difference between the two buckets? And the second one is, how do you decide what you're going to support? The first one's a little easier. What's the difference between Mission Sunday budget and our regular mission budget? So our Mission Sunday program was put in place to give you, the body, the opportunity to support over and above activities, things that we can do to enhance the effectiveness of our missionaries in the field. For example, in the past year, with our funds from last year's Mission Sunday, you built a new dormitory for Johnny Estep and the Lady Christian School. You bought some new songbooks for Jerry Lawless for the work going on in New Mexico. You helped George Funk build another gospel chariot. And for the Haitian church, we bought them a van so that they had transportation to pick up the members that don't have. And those are the kinds of things that are over and above our normal support that we do with these types of funds. Now, we also use those funds to support one-time works and scholarship opportunities for mission trips. And this past year, we had 8 different mission trips that we gave scholarships to with the Mission Sunday funds. Oh, sorry. So, jumped ahead of myself. With the Mission Sunday funds. So last week, forgot to set up my story here. Last week, Gary was up here teaching the Bible class hour and going through the budget as we have them. And as he was doing it, Gary threw out this huge number. He said, our goal for Mission Sunday is $500,000. Now I'm sitting in there in the audience, and my first reaction was, whoa, we didn't talk about that. Where'd that number come from? That's not a realistic goal. If we stand up and ask for that kind of money, people will think we're crazy. And then after the class was over, I had a brother that came over to me and he said, 500's a big number. But if everybody gives just a little bit every week, you'd be amazed at what that could add up to. So the next day in my email, I got this chart. And I didn't want to change it for the purposes of PowerPoint, because of the power of what it illustrates. So basically, the math that he did for me was, hey, we got about 360 heads of households or total family units in the body here. If everybody gave $10 a week for the whole year, it's $187,000. And then he did the math for me for 10, for 20, for 30, for 40, for $50 a week. And the total came to $936,000. I am not going to stand before you and ask for $936,000. But it is amazing to see what a little bit each week adds up to. Okay, so that's the difference between Mission Sunday and our normal budget. Let's talk a little bit about how do we decide what we're going to support. Now, this one's a little bit more complicated. This past year, work had actually started in the previous year, but this year we finalized and sent through the elders a new mission committee guidelines, a way of kind of giving us a focus, if you will, on how we decide what we're going to support. And so within that focus document, I call it a course screen, right? It's a filter, a way of saying when a new opportunity comes in front of you, how do you decide whether it fits within your focus? So we have identified 3 areas overall that we are going to focus on as a mission committee. Number 1, our primary focus is going to be establishing local, indigenous, self-supporting congregations. We want to find and support and plant churches. This mission effort for us is to go into all the world. It is not to continue supporting into all the world in those mission areas forever. We want to go into an area. We want to find someone in that area. We want to support them. We want to build them up, give them the infrastructure to build up their own congregation, and then move on to another area to spread the gospel, right? So primary focus. Secondary focus is to figure out how to integrate our body into the mission efforts, right? It's easy for us to write a check and to send someone out into the field, but we're all part of the Great Commission, aren't we? So we have to figure out how to integrate our mission efforts into the activities that we are doing as a body. Things like Vacation Bible School come to mind immediately. Yes, it's a great, fun opportunity for our kids, an educational opportunity, but it's also an opportunity for us to invite our family and friends and neighbors, right? So we have to figure out how to put some outreach into our in-reach activities. All the great things we're doing as a body, how do we pull outreach components into those? Okay, number 3, the third focus is to want to focus on establishing or supporting preacher training schools, both domestic and abroad. So when I think of the idea of this indigenous support, or these indigenous missionaries that we want to support, it may be best for them to be trained in the area or the country. So for example, the South African Bible College might be the best place to train someone who's going to work in South Africa. The Lady Christian School, as we'll talk about, is training people from the Philippines or that part of the world to plant churches, congregations, to spread the gospel in that part of the world. So we don't want to focus just our efforts on the United States preaching schools, but foreign and domestic. Okay. With that as a backdrop, if you will, with that as a backdrop, I'd like to go back to the text that we started with. So in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, Jesus told the apostles, as an example, to start in Jerusalem, then go to Judea and Samaria, and then to the ends of the earth. For us, I'd like to do the same. Let's talk about what we're doing in Louisville. Let's talk about what we're doing in our region of the world, the United States, and ultimately, let's talk about the world. Let's start with the world and work our way home. I know this is an eye chart, and I was trying to figure out how to blow it up better, but that's not my area of expertise. But the dots, or the stars on the map, if you will, give you a perspective of the works that we support around the world. We're in the Philippines. We are in China, and we'll talk a little bit about China in a bit. We're in China. We're in India. The continent of Africa, we have two different works in the continent of Africa that we support. Over in Brazil, that Randy gave us in South America, we're in Brazil. We're in Haiti, and we're in the United States as our work. So let's pivot and talk a little bit about each one of the works that we support. And I know the guys have already given a great thumbnail sketch on some of this, so I'll try to hit some of the highlights, but we didn't get a chance to cover every work, and I do want to cover those works with you. So let's talk a little bit about each one, starting with the world, Johnny Estep and the Laity Christian School. Now, there's actually two campuses now that we have. There's the original campus in, I'll butcher this, Tacloban City, and then the second one that they've opened in Malbal. Probably way wrong. But two campuses, same principles, same point. It's a Christian school. They want to train people to share the Bible with folks. They want to plant churches in that particular area along the same principles of indigenous population. And we've supported this work for the past 5 years. Ricky Goodham. Ricky's probably one of the hardest working guys that we have spent time learning about. In India, and India is a country that we're going to look real hard as a group to figure out how we can do more in India. John Dean was here about a month or so ago and shared some work that they're doing in India. And the field is ripe for harvest in India, and we need to figure out how we can do more to support what's going on in that country. Ricky's doing a lot on his own. Ricky today is doing radio broadcast every day. He's doing TV broadcast 4 days a week. We're doing monthly print media. He's doing multiple gospel meetings every month. And in his spare time, he is the director of a children's home there. We've only supported this work for a couple of years, but it's exciting to see what's going on there. As we pivot to the continent of Africa, there's two different works that we support in Africa. Number one, we support George Funk and the Gospel Chariots. And I wish I could do George justice, the passion that George has in his videos that he shared with us a couple of weeks ago. But that's just an exciting work. I mean, it's exciting to see the things that they're doing. The gospel chariots, they have 11 gospel chariots now. They are working on building another one. There's a matching program out there for if we can raise $50,000. They've already got a matching sponsor that will donate another $50,000 to build another chariot to expand his reach. He's in 19 African countries right now, and we've supported that work since 2000. As I move to the south, we support Chris Dupree in East London, South Africa. And Jeff's going to give us a little bit more later on some time with Chris, but Chris is our largest work as far as overall support. We've been supporting Chris for 13 years now. And Chris is involved in a number of things. He's heavily involved in the downtown church there in East London. He has planted a dozen or so congregations in the surrounding area. He's involved in radio broadcast. He has the Eastern Cape Bible College that he runs. And his latest project is really kind of interesting. It's this idea of youth camps. So George has bought this farm. And he is in the process of converting or building these a youth camp on his farm. The idea that he has is that the area that he's in is pretty depressed. The area of East London is poor, unemployment is kind of high, and it's not the best environment for young men and women to grow up and to be focused on what's important in life, that relationship with Jesus. And so Chris has the idea of, if I can build this camp and I can pull these youth together and pull them apart from the world for a period of time, then I can start to reach the youth who will grow up to build the families. He has a modest goal, if you will. It is $10,000 to $15,000 a year. It's going to take him about 3 years or so to erect the buildings and stuff on the property that he needs. But we're excited to look at the work of what he's doing. Now, Chris was here earlier this year and shared with us and met with the mission committee. And in fact, I think we met with him about 3 hours. And we spent a lot of time with Chris. And he also shared with us some things I really hadn't thought about as it relates to our mission works. Not only is he report out on the works that he was doing, but he gave us some insight into what it's like to be a missionary in the field. It can be lonely. Chris talked about moving his family there and his kids growing up in an environment that were different than their family was different than some of the other families around. The typical things that our teenagers might think about, their friends in school, growing up, ultimately looking for your spouse. Some of those cultural language differences were a little challenging, and it can be hard. It can be depressing. And while Chris was very focused on his work, his wife and his family had periods of loneliness as well. And it got us thinking as a group, what else can we do besides financially to support our missionaries? So let me take just a quick detour, if you will, from our report out and give you 3 practical ideas of things that we can do to support our missionaries in the field. Number 1, we can pray for them. I so much appreciate this past year our elders choosing a mission work each month and praying for it and putting it in the bulletin that we're praying for that particular work. Our missionaries get a copy of our bulletin. We're trying to do a better job of getting it to them every week, but they get a copy of our bulletin to help them be connected with us. It is nothing more encouraging than opening up that bulletin and seeing your name in there and know that this body of believers is praying for you and your family. That's encouraging. So, pray for them. Number 2, send them a card. Everybody loves to get cards. It's an incredibly encouraging thing to do for a little piece of paper, right? And I will tell you from personal experience, you guys are great at sending cards. Some of them are just cards, I'm thinking of you. Some of them are deep thoughts that you put in those cards of encouragement. Some of them are just the greatest artwork that you just don't know what to do with them, but they are precious because you know that the time that was put into those cards. But send a card to encourage them. The third thing you can do is you can send them a care package. One of the things that we are trying to do as a mission committee is to get a list of their favorite things. I know from my experience when I was in Italy that when we had dinner with a mission family when we were over there, and one of the things that they could not get, they were from the States, they could not get jalapeno peppers in Italy. Now, jalapeno peppers are hard to ship, but you can get them in a jar, right? Or a can to ship to them. And so if we can find a list of their favorite things and send them a care package just to say someone's thinking of you. Now, when you walked in this morning, on the side of the table over here, there was a sign that said you can send some encouragement to our missionaries. And I appreciate Justin and Chelsea for doing this. But there is a booklet with every missionary's picture on the front of that. Take a moment, if you would. We'll leave it out there for a week or so. But take a moment, write a note of encouragement, put your favorite Bible verse. Just take a moment and write something in their book. And we're going to mail them their books just to let them know that we're thinking about them. Okay, enough of my aside. Back to our report out. Okay, so let's pivot from Africa to Brazil. We support Randy Wazika in Brazil. And as Randy told us last week on his report out, there's really two things that Randy's focused on. Local evangelizing, done primarily through the Bible school there, and maturing Christians. This idea, Randy is not a local indigenous. Randy's from Texas. And I think he did a great job of disguising that accent last week when he spoke to us. But one of the things that Randy is focused on doing is using that Bible school to bring people in and deeper into the Word. And we've had several hundred different people that have completed a Bible course through the Bible school there. Now he's focused on the idea of developing that second tier of leaders for Brazil. He's been at this now for a dozen years. And so he is trying to develop that next tier of leadership and build the support tools for them to keep those individual congregations that he's planted over the years self-supporting, working on their own, without relying on my mission contact point, Randy, to do all the work for them. Okay, so let's pivot from the world to the region. Serge kind of lives in both. So Serge Villarson works with the Haitian community, and Serge lives in Orlando, but is half in Haiti as well. And he supports the Haitian community in Orlando and in Haiti. He does preacher training, he does gospel meetings, he does encouragement. Now, Serge has come to us with the idea of he wants to go back to Haiti full time. The environment is right for him to go back to Haiti on a full-time basis. The church in Orlando, the Haitian church in Orlando, is doing better. Last year, we met, don't you hate it when you go blank on a name? Last year, we brought a young man, Serge brought a young man with him that he has been mentoring, training, to grow up in, that he can start to transition things in Orlando to that young man so that he can devote more and more attention to going back to Haiti. He's in the process of developing plans to share with us to build a school, preacher training school there, and to build a children's home aspect on that as well. And so we're excited about the works or the direction that Serge is going. Now to the States, the region. So we support Michael and Diane Richardson. We've supported them for about the last 5 years. And they're out of Iowa, but that's really not, that's where they live. It's not really where they work. So Michael primarily does domestic and international mission trips. He leads domestic and international mission trips. They do Vacation Bible School. They were doing a lot more construction-type projects on their mission works, but they're running gospel meetings now, and this is one where Gary last week shared with us a big, long list of places that Michael is planning to go this next year. Michael does mission trips from Alaska to Jamaica to Mexico to India, and I think about anywhere along the way, in between. And so those are opportunities as we talk back to involvement of the body. How do we go? You want to go? We want you to go into the mission field. Michael is going to help us lead some of those efforts to where if we want to go on a mission trip opportunity, Michael's going to provide us a little bit of those vehicles for us to go along with that. One too many. Thank you. Okay, so the next work is Jerry Lawless. And we started working with Jerry 2 or 3 years ago in the New Mexico area. Jerry runs a program called Operation New Mexico. And so the churches out in West Texas, New Mexico area are smaller congregations. Most of them don't have a full-time preacher. And what Jerry is focused on doing in these rural congregations is, you tell me what needs to be done, I'm going to try to help it get it done. That's the easiest way to define what Jerry's doing. Jerry's helping them to get materials. He's preaching lessons for them. He is doing some training for the men in those congregations. And Jerry's even doing video lessons that if I can't get a preacher there for you on this particular Sunday, I at least have a video lesson for video preaching for the worship service. Okay, so we also support some preacher training schools here in the United States. We have worked with Will Hanstein since 2005 when he started at Bear Valley. Will is now in Knoxville at the Southeast Institute, what's hard to say, Southeast Institute of Biblical Studies. This is the old East Tennessee School of Preaching that they have transformed into the Southeast Institute of Biblical Studies. He's the director of the school. He teaches at the school. Their enrollment is starting to grow. There's a lot of good things happening on that. And Will is going to be here on November the 14th to give us a report out specifically on the work that's going on there. In addition to Will, we support Jim Collins and Heritage Christian. And I put them together, even though they're two separate works in the way that we define them, because it's the same entity. Jim Collins is the director of enrollment for them. Now, Heritage Christian has about 114 students, and I have not been able to confirm this statistic. However, it amazed me, so I'm going to use it. Last year, Heritage Christian graduated more preaching Bible students than a few of our large Christian universities graduated. Now, if you think about that for a moment, 114 students versus 2,000, 6,000, whatever the attendance is of some of these larger Christian universities, that's an amazing statistic, and it's the reason why we're supporting Heritage Christian overall. Okay, so world, region, how about DFW? How about Louisville? How about the world, the city that we are in? Well, the greatest example of what work we're doing here is with Mission Printing. Not only do we send financial aid to Mission Printing to help them print and distribute materials around the world, but I know many of you have also volunteered your time to go down there and to collate and to help them print and put together packets of material to ship around the world. How about here in Louisville? What are we doing? Well, as a congregation in Louisville, we do a lot of good things. And every time I put a list up here, I'm always scared I'm going to miss the program, right? So here are a few examples of things that we're doing. Vacation Bible School always has an element of invite your friends to come to Vacation Bible School. The Caring and Sharing program, whether it is the school supply program, is a community outreach program, or the Angel Tree program, community outreach program, where we are trying hard to give them the message of Jesus in addition to meeting their needs for school. The Women to Women convention that we completed last week was another opportunity for the ladies to invite friends. And next week is our Family Fall Festival, next Saturday evening. Our Family Fall Festival is another opportunity for us to invite people. So we're doing a lot of good things here in Louisville. But when Jesus said, "Go ye," he meant, "Go me," right? So the question is, what are you and I doing? For that, let's turn our attention to the passage that Billy read for us in Acts chapter 17. I'd like to pull out 3 different observations from Paul that we can apply to our own life. Now, Paul is in the midst of his second missionary journey, and he visits Thessalonica, Berea, and Athens in there. And in each one of those, Paul goes through a similar process that I think we can pull some examples out and apply it to ourselves. So the first example is, as Paul went into a town, where'd he go? If you look at the text in Acts chapter 17, the entire chapter, if you read verse 1, verse 10, or verse 17 of it, each different locale that Paul went to, in each instance, it says that Paul went to a synagogue. Why did he go to the synagogue? It's because he was comfortable there. See, Paul grew up a Jew among Jews, right? He studied under Gamaliel. Those were his people. He knew their language. He knew their struggles. He knew about them, if you will. These were his friends, if I can use that term in a loose kind of sense, right? These were his friends. Now, most of us live on different streets. We live in different neighborhoods. We work at different companies. A lot of us go to different schools. But, and I know, as I say that, some of you are probably saying, well, I have family in the church, or I go to school with my friends, right? But I would guess that no two of us have exactly the same circle, right? So the circle that I run into, where I live, my neighbors, my work environment, my family, doesn't exactly match up with your circle of people. And if my circle doesn't match up perfectly with your circle, that means that you are uniquely qualified to share the gospel of Jesus with someone. Lots of different studies out there, but the consensus that I read was at least 75% of people who accept the Lord's invitation come to learn about Him through family and friends. So observation number 1, you are uniquely qualified to share the gospel of message with your family and friends. Number 2, it's about Christ. Oh, wait. 2, consistent effort. Paul preached on multiple occasions to the same group. Going back to our text for a moment, in verse 2, it says that Paul reasoned in the synagogue for 3 Sabbaths. 3 weeks in a row, Paul reasoned in the synagogue. In verse 11, with the Bereans, it says that they searched the scriptures daily, implying more than once, right? Daily. And in verse 17, in our Athens section, it says that Paul reasons both in the marketplace and in the synagogue on a daily basis. You see the pattern here? More than once. Now I know that some of you have tried to reach your family and friends. You've had a conversation with them about Jesus. Maybe you've invited someone that you work with to come to a Bible meeting, to come to Hubs, to come to church with you on a Sunday. Maybe you did it once, and they said no. Maybe you did it twice, and they said no. The point is that Paul gave a consistent effort, and for us, we need to give a consistent effort to continue to invite our friends and family to come. Now, I will tell you, you always wonder whether or not it's the right time. When's the right time to ask them, right? Should I ask them now? Should I not ask them now? They're going through some tough times. Maybe it's a good time to ask them. I can tell you, I don't know when there's not a good time to share good news. And isn't that what the gospel is? Good news. Number 3, third observation. It's about Christ. It's not about us. Paul met with different reactions. In verse 4, it says in Thessalonica, some were persuaded. Not all, some were persuaded. In verse 11, in Berea, it says they received the word with all readiness, and some, and many, believed. And in verse 32, when I'm in Athens, it says some mocked Paul, and others wanted to hear more. Folks, we are the messenger. Christ changes hearts. Sometimes we get so concerned about what others might think of us from sharing the good news with them. I might put somebody off. I might offend somebody. They'll think differently of me if I share the gospel news. Isn't that the point? Paul said in Romans 12 that we are to be transformed. Right? We're to be changed. We're not to conform to the world, but we're to be transformed by the renewing of our heart and our mind. It's not about us. It's about Christ. There's a sign in our building. You guys know where it's at? Should give you a nice clue. It's by some windows. As you exit the doors in the back of the building, there is a sign up on the wall that says you are now entering the mission field. You guys all saw that, right? You are now entering the mission field. It is our opportunity to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every living creature. Starting in Louisville, throughout the country, and into all the world. We do that through the missionaries that we support, the ones that we discussed today, by the funds that we collect on our Mission Sunday collection. And we do that through the efforts of you and me in our homes, in our schools, and in our neighborhoods. For some of us, we may not even have to leave this building. For some of us that are here today, the opportunity to accept the invitation of Jesus Christ is available for you. If you'd like to learn more, if you would like to hear more about the gospel message, there's many people in here today that would love to sit down and share before we leave this building right now. If you've never accepted the invitation of Jesus Christ, been baptized for the forgiveness of your sins, you can do that today. It's available right now. Had to check and see if it was filled up. It's available right now. Maybe you have been. Maybe you've been baptized and you lost the joy of being a Christian. Maybe you need some encouragement to share the gospel with one of your family or friends. Whatever your need is, we ask you that you come forward as we stand and as we sing.